My name is Leah Harrison, and I'm 25 years old. I never imagined that returning home from my first successful business trip would mean finding my belongings stuffed into garbage bags. Black plastic sacks were lined up at the front gate, stacked like markers of an ending. My mother stood there with her arms crossed, my 3 siblings at her side, their faces firm and unwelcoming. The smile I had carried from the airport disappeared the moment Mom spoke those sharp words. "You're 25 now. It's time for you to leave." Before I share the rest, let me know where you're tuning in from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow this story of family conflict and unexpected resilience. Growing up as the youngest of 4 in our suburban Chicago home was never simple. My father passed away when I was just 7, leaving my mother, Sandra, to raise us on her own. My oldest brother, Jackson, was already 18. My sister Natalie was 16. And my brother Kevin was 14. They all had memories of Dad, while I needed photographs just to remember his face. After his death, Mom changed. The warm, cheerful woman I remembered became someone who measured love through achievement and obedience. She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat and constantly reminded us of her sacrifices. "I gave up everything for you," kids became her refrain, usually followed by, "the least you could do is..." Being the youngest came with both advantages and drawbacks. By the time I needed braces or help with tuition, our finances were more stable, but the emotional toll of years as a single parent had hardened Mom. She controlled every part of my life, my friendships, my college major, and my decisions. My siblings followed the exact paths she wanted. Jackson became a surgeon, Natalie, a corporate lawyer, and Kevin an engineer. They all married partners she approved of, bought homes she admired, and started families on her schedule. To her, they were success stories. Then, there was me. I studied marketing instead of law or medicine, joined a startup instead of a traditional firm, and remained single at 25. Compared to the others, I was the outlier. "When will you get a real job?" Mom would ask during Sunday dinners. "Natalie was making 6 figures at your age." Even so, I stayed home after graduation. At first, it was a practical decision. My entry-level job didn't pay much, and housing in Chicago was expensive. Living with Mom allowed me to save and pay off student loans. When I moved back in, she said, "You can stay as long as you need." Family supports family, but her support came with conditions. Some spoken, many not. I paid rent, bought groceries, handled most chores, and drove her to appointments. I helped with technology issues and listened to long complaints about neighbors and coworkers, though never about my siblings when they were around. The dynamic with them was just as complicated. To Jackson, Natalie, and Kevin, I was still the baby. In family disagreements, they sided with Mom, brushing off my perspective as immature. Jackson often said, "You'll understand when you have more experience." Despite the fact that I'd lived independently through college and even traveled abroad, things he hadn't done. By my mid-20s, the strain between independence and family duty grew. Friends my age lived with roommates, dated freely, and stayed out without constant check-ins. I envied their freedom but felt bound by financial limits and obligations at home. Then came an opportunity I believed might change everything. Our marketing firm secured a major client, and with my fresh ideas, I was chosen to present in New York. It was my first business trip, my first solo presentation, and possibly the first big step in my career. The presentation was set for a Thursday, with follow-up meetings through Friday. I had prepared for weeks. I had rehearsed my pitch so many times that I could deliver it in my sleep. The night before my flight, Mom seemed distracted during dinner, barely responding to my nervous excitement. "I'll be back late Friday night," I reminded her while washing the dishes. "Fine," she said, without looking up from her phone. "Jack and Natalie are coming over Saturday with the kids. Make sure you're here to help." I swallowed my disappointment at her indifference. Deep down, I hoped this milestone would finally earn her approval. If I could prove my career was viable, maybe she would see me as an adult, instead of a constant letdown. The New York presentation had gone better than I imagined. The clients loved our campaign, requested only minor changes, and approved a 7-figure budget. My boss even took me to dinner afterward, discussing a possible promotion and raise if the launch succeeded. "You have real talent, Leah," he told me. "I see a bright future for you here." Those words meant more than the fine wine we shared. At last, someone recognized my potential rather than my flaws. During my limited free time, I bought small gifts for everyone: a silk scarf for Mom, craft beers for my brothers, and a designer pen for my sister. Small tokens of success, and perhaps peace offerings to bridge the distance between us. On the flight home, I imagined sharing my triumph at the family gathering. Maybe Jackson would finally stop asking when I planned to find a stable job. Perhaps Natalie would quit sending me admin postings from her law firm. And maybe Kevin would stop pushing me toward a master's degree. Most of all, I pictured Mom's reaction. In my daydream, she smiled with pride and told her friends about my accomplishment, finally acknowledging that I was building my own path, even if it looked different from my siblings. But that fantasy collapsed the moment I returned, replaced by something I could never have expected. The Chicago afternoon welcomed me with perfect spring weather. As my share pulled away from O'Hare, sunshine poured over the city after weeks of rain, which I took as a good sign. The gifts sat neatly in my carry-on, wrapped in tissue from a boutique near my hotel. My laptop bag held the signed contract that would transform my department's budget and, hopefully, my career. I texted Mom to let her know I had landed, but she didn't respond. That wasn't unusual. She often missed messages while busy with her gardening club or church. Still, unease crept in. During my trip, she'd barely replied to my check-ins, often with just one-word answers or silence. Halfway home, my phone rang. Jackson's name appeared. He rarely called me directly, preferring the family group chat or Mom as the go-between. "Hello," I answered, uneasy. "Where are you right now?" His tone was clipped, professional, the same voice he probably used with difficult clients. "In a car, heading home from the airport. My flight landed early." "Why?" Silence stretched long enough to quicken my pulse. "Mom wants to talk to you when you get home." "We all do." "About what? Is someone sick?" My worry spiked. "Just get home, Leah." He hung up. Panic took over. Had something happened to my nieces or nephews? Was Mom ill? Maybe a distant relative had passed. None of those explained Jackson's cold tone or why everyone needed to confront me. I tried calling Natalie and Kevin. No answer. I sent messages to the family chat, but only saw read receipts, no replies. Suddenly, Mom's last message from the night before felt ominous. "We need to discuss some changes when you return." The driver noticed my agitation. "Everything all right, miss?" "Just family stuff," I said with a strained smile. As we turned onto my street, the neighborhood looked as peaceful as ever. Kids played outside, couples walked their dogs, retirees tended their gardens, completely unaware that my world was about to change. Our modest two-story house came into view, its blue siding and white trim as familiar as my own reflection. Then, I noticed them. Black garbage bags. At least a dozen lined the driveway near the gate. 4 figures stood stiffly in the yard, their posture tense and unwelcoming. I recognized them instantly. Mom, in her gardening apron, Jackson in his weekend clothes, Natalie in her sharp business casual outfit despite it being Saturday, and Kevin in his usual university sweatshirt. "You can stop here," I told the driver, my own voice sounding distant. I paid quickly, grabbed my luggage, and stepped out. The car pulled away, leaving me standing before my family's united front. None of them smiled. None of them moved to help. "What is going on?" I asked slowly. "What are all these bags?" Mom stepped forward, her expression hard. "These are your things. It's time you find your own place." The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. "What? Why? We never discussed this." "You're 25, she said firmly, ignoring my protest. "All your siblings moved out by 23. You've overstayed your welcome." Jackson nodded. "It's time you took responsibility." The irony nearly made me laugh. I had been paying rent, managing chores, working full-time, and building my career. By any measure, I was already responsible. "This is insane," I said, searching their faces for some sign of compassion. "I just got back from a work trip. I have nowhere to go." "You should have planned better," Natalie cut in, glancing at her watch as if my situation was inconveniencing her. "We all found apartments after college, with co-signing help and financial support from Mom and Dad." I reminded her, frustration breaking through my shock. "And with higher starting salaries and secure careers." "Excuses," Kevin muttered, shaking his head. "You've had 3 years to figure this out." I turned back to Mom, desperate for an explanation. "Why now? Why like this? Without warning?" "I've been hinting for months," she said evenly. "You chose not to listen." "Hinting isn't notice," I shot back, raising my voice despite my effort to stay calm. Normal families talk about major decisions. They don't pack someone's belongings in garbage bags and ambush them when they return. Don't raise your voice to Mom, Jackson warned. Stepping closer. The absurdity hit me all at once. I was being scolded about respect while being treated with none. My family had quietly packed my life into trash bags while I was away, then presented me with an eviction. What is this really about? I asked suddenly, recalling conversations between Mom and Natalie about property values. Are you planning to sell the house? For a moment, surprise flickered across Mom's face before she recovered. My financial choices are none of your concern. They are if you're making me homeless overnight, I countered. You're not homeless, Natalie said with forced patience. You have a job, get an apartment like everyone else, without references, without saving time, without warning, I said, looking at each of them. Do you hear yourselves? Who does this to family? This is for your own good, Mom insisted. You need to stand on your own 2 feet. By kicking them out from under me, I replied sharply. A neighbor walking his dog slowed to watch, making the humiliation sting even more. This is ridiculous, I said quietly. Let's go inside and talk like adults. There's nothing to discuss, Mom said flatly. The decision is final. Without input from the person most affected, I pressed. Your input has been your refusal to move forward, Kevin said. We've all talked about it and agree this is necessary. The words hit me like a blow. They had judged and decided my future behind my back. The gifts I'd brought from my trip now felt like desperate gestures for affection that had already been withdrawn. When did you pack all this? I asked, gesturing toward the bags. Yesterday, Mom answered the door. Jackson and Kevin stood with her. The timing wasn't accidental. They had waited until I was unable to defend myself or my place in the family. So what am I supposed to do now? Where do I go tonight? You must have friends you can stay with, Natalie suggested, though her voice carried doubt. Or get a hotel, Jackson added. You just returned from New York. Surely you can afford a room for a few nights. They didn't realize that company had covered my New York expenses, and my savings were set aside for moving costs I had planned to discuss with Mom when the time was right. At least let me inside to sort through these bags, I said. I doubt you knew what mattered when you packed. Everything's there, Mom replied firmly. Your room is cleared. Her words hit like a final verdict. They had erased me from the house as if I never belonged. A surge of anger cut through the shock. 25 years of trying to earn approval, walking on eggshells, enduring comparisons, all of it culminated in this moment of betrayal. How dare you? I asked, my voice trembling. How dare you stand there pretending this is justified while treating me this way? Dramatic as always, Natalie muttered. Dramatic? I laughed bitterly. You ambush me after a work trip, toss my things in trash bags, and tell me I'm homeless overnight. Yet I'm the dramatic one. We knew you'd react like this, Jackson said. That's why we did it while you were gone. You mean while I wasn't here to defend myself? That's not maturity, that's cowardice. Mom's face flushed. Don't speak to us that way after all I've done for you. What exactly have you done for me lately? I asked. She charged me rent, left most household chores to me, criticized my career, and compared me unfavorably to my siblings. You, ungrateful, she started. Ungrateful. I cut in. I've been nothing but grateful. I've thanked you, helped you, supported you financially and emotionally. I've endured every criticism and still showed up with love and respect. The pretense of unity cracked. Mom turned to Jackson. I told you she'd make this difficult. Difficult. Why now? Why the rush? Why garbage bags instead of boxers? Why the audience? I gestured toward my siblings. Kevin shifted uneasily, the first hint he wasn't fully committed. Finally, he spoke. Mom's selling the house, Kevin. Natalie hissed. She deserves to know. He insisted that the truth surfaced in pieces. Mom had accepted an offer well above market value. The buyers wanted immediate possession, without including me in the discussion. She and my siblings decided my inheritance share would be reduced, blaming my extended stay at home. So this is about money, I said, connecting the dots. You're forcing me out to sell the house and cut my share. You haven't paid the mortgage, Natalie argued. I've paid rent for 3 years, I countered. Where did that money go, if not for household expenses? Your rent barely covered food and utilities. Mom dismissed, and Dad's will, I pressed. He left the house to all of us. I may have been young, but I remember the lawyer explaining that. Uneasy glances passed between them. They had hoped I'd forgotten or wouldn't fight for my rights. You'd sue your own mother? Jackson asked. You'd disinherit your own daughter? I fired back. We stood at an impasse in the yard, neighbors pretending not to notice. Years of swallowed resentment spilled out. You've never respected my choices or treated me as an equal adult. You've used me for labor, emotional support, and as an outlet for your frustration. And now, when it's convenient, you discard me. No one argued. Their silence confirmed everything I had feared about my place in the family. With sudden clarity, I turned toward my car, parked on the street. What are you doing? Mom demanded. Leaving, I replied simply. Isn't that what you want? One by one, I loaded the garbage bags, clothes, books, electronics, mementos, hastily thrown together into the trunk. My hatchback barely fit the pieces of my life. When the car was full, I faced them one last time. They stood united, as they've always had without me. You know, I just landed the biggest client in my firm's history. I was about to be promoted. I even brought gifts for all of you. I gave a small, humorless laugh at my own words. Kevin's voice carried a trace of regret, naivety. I honestly thought you'd be proud of me, Leah. No, I interrupted firmly. Your stance has been made clear. I refuse to stay where I'm neither wanted nor valued. To their surprise, I smiled not out of joy, but from the relief of having nothing left to lose. Goodbye, I said, stepping into my car. I hope the money is worth it. I drove away without looking back, tears clouding my vision as familiar streets suddenly felt foreign. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages, likely from family realizing the weight of their actions, but I ignored them. With no plan in mind, I called the only person I fully trusted, my college roommate, Zoe. Between sobs, I told her everything. Come here right now, she said without hesitation. Stay as long as you need. Zoe and her boyfriend Tyler lived just 30 minutes away. When I arrived, they helped unload my car without a single question, preparing their spare room as a temporary refuge. That first night was the hardest. Lying on an unfamiliar bed, surrounded by garbage bags I couldn't bring myself to unpack, I cycled through grief, anger, and disbelief. My phone buzzed again. Messages Zoe eventually persuaded me to read. They were predictable. Mom insisted I was overreacting. Jackson lectured me about responsibility. Natalie sent apartment listings far beyond my budget. Kevin alone admitted some regret, though only about how it was handled, not the decision itself. These people are toxic, Zoe said firmly after reading them. You need distance. They're still my family, I muttered. Family doesn't act like this, Tyler interjected. What they did was emotional abuse. At first, the word felt extreme, but hearing it from others gave me clarity. What happened wasn't normal, it wasn't my fault, and most importantly, I didn't have to accept it. That night, I made 2 promises. I would build a life entirely independent of my family, and I would never again base my worth on their approval. As I drifted into uneasy sleep, a flicker of possibility stirred beneath the pain. For the first time as an adult, I was free to define myself. The first week after leaving was a blur of practical hurdles. Zoe and Tyler urged me to stay as long as needed, but I knew their small apartment wasn't sustainable long term. Their kindness, however, gave me breathing room to search without rushing. On work breaks, I scrolled endlessly through rental listings. Chicago's market was tougher than expected. Most places demanded proof of income 3 times the rent, perfect credit, upfront deposits, and references. My modest savings, once enough at home, barely covered the upfront costs. After 10 days, I found a small studio in a less desirable neighborhood. The landlord agreed to a larger deposit in place of rental history. The apartment was far from ideal. Peeling paint, outdated appliances, and thin walls that carried every sound. Still, it was mine, a space no one could invade or control. Moving in showed me how little I owned. My family had packed my personal things, but none of the basics for independent living. No dishes, towels, or furniture beyond my bed set. We'll throw a housewarming, Zoe insisted, helping me unpack into the tiny closet. Everyone brings something useful instead of pointless decor. She kept her word. A small group of friends arrived with second-hand furniture, kitchen, supplies, and essentials. By night's end, the apartment was no longer empty. It was simple but livable. It's not much, I apologized as we ate pizza off paper plates on mismatched chairs. It's a start, Amber replied, and you did it without them. Reality hit hard that first month. After paying rent, utilities, food, and transport, my paycheck left little for savings. One tracked every expense, planned meals carefully, and learned which stores offered the best prices. Work became my stability. The Monday after leaving, I arrived early, poured my emotions into the New York client campaign, and turned pain into focus. You've been putting in serious hours, my boss noted 2 weeks later. Your New York presentation was excellent, and the follow-up flawless. Thank you, I said, leaving unspoken the chaos behind my effort. We're restructuring the team, he added. I want you to lead digital marketing. It comes with a 15% raise and more responsibility. The promotion couldn't have come at a better time. It didn't make me wealthy, but it eased financial strain and, more importantly, validated the career my family had dismissed as unworthy. Even as work thrived, emotionally I faltered. Nightmares of losing everything disrupted my sleep. Unfamiliar sounds in my building often triggered waves of panic. Trust issues shaped many of my interactions with colleagues and friends. You should talk to someone professional, Zoe suggested, during one of our weekly coffee meets. Therapy is expensive, I argued. So is carrying the weight of trauma, she replied. Your new job includes health insurance, right? She even helped me navigate the insurance portal to find therapists in network. The woman I chose specialized in family estrangement and adult children of controlling parents. Our first session opened emotions I hadn't realized I was holding back. What your family did was not normal or acceptable, my therapist affirmed. Evicting someone without notice is legally questionable, even with family. Doing it while you were away shows planning and disrespect. Weekly sessions helped me see patterns of manipulation that had defined my family dynamics. I learned about scapegoating, golden children, and conditional love. Slowly, I rebuilt my self-worth, separate from family approval. Practical independence became another focus. Having never managed certain responsibilities at home, I now taught myself basic plumbing, how to jumpstart a car, simple cooking, and small home repairs. Each new skill felt like proof that I could survive on, even thrive on my own. 3 months after moving out, I ran into my brother Kevin at a downtown coffee shop. The encounter was awkward but revealing. You look good, he said hesitantly. How are you? I'm doing well, I answered honestly. Working a lot, I got promoted. That's great, he paused. Mom's been asking about you. She has a strange way of showing concern, cutting me off completely. You cut off contact, he countered, after being thrown out with no warning. Yes, I did. We stood in uneasy silence, coffee cups between us. She wants you to come to Sunday dinner, to talk things through. On what terms? I asked. Does she admit what she did was wrong? Is she apologizing? Or does she expect me to pretend nothing happened? His silence answered for him. There would be no acknowledgement, no apology, no change. I can't do that. Kevin, I'm not the same person who left 3 months ago. She's still your mother, he insisted. Yes, I agreed. And I'm still her daughter. That didn't stop her from treating me like I didn't matter. As we parted, he seemed unsettled, maybe seeing our family dynamic in a new light. The encounter reinforced my decision to keep boundaries, even though it reopened old wounds. The path forward wasn't smooth. Some days I felt strong in my independence. Others, I struggled with the weight of estrangement. But step by step, I built a life shaped by my own choices and values. As 3 months stretched into 4, then 5, a transformation began. The constant anxiety of early independence faded, replaced by growing confidence in my ability to face challenges. My promotion became a turning point. Leading the digital marketing division gave me visibility within the company and direct client interaction. I built a small, effective team, implemented new analytics strategies, and delivered results that impressed both clients and executives. Your campaign increased engagement by 40%. Our CEO noted at a quarterly review. Excellent work, Leah. But recognition, given in front of leadership, felt more validating than any approval I had ever sought from family. With financial stability came practical upgrades. I traded my unreliable car for a newer model. When my lease was up, I moved into a brighter apartment in a safer neighborhood, complete with a small balcony where I could grow herbs and flowers. Decorating the new space became a process of self-discovery. Free from my mother's tastes or my siblings' opinions, I explored my own style. I grew fond of mid-century modern design, bold colors, and functional layouts. "This place feels like you," Zoe observed when she visited. "Your old room." Never did. She was right. My childhood bedroom had been frozen in time, while my space at Mom's house had always felt temporary. This apartment, though rented, truly reflected who I was becoming. My social circle expanded too. I joined a book club, volunteered at a local food bank, and attended work events I would have avoided before. These activities connected me with people who knew me only as I was now, not as the family disappointment or the youngest sibling. Among them was Daniel, a graphic designer who worked with my team on client projects. Our professional connection grew into friendship, then into a cautious romance. Unlike past relationships, this one developed at its own pace, free from scrutiny or pressure. "Tell me about your family," Daniel asked on our third date. "Complicated," I replied, sharing a brief version of my story. "They sound toxic." "I'm sorry you went through that," he said simply. No defensive family loyalty, no suggestion that I must have deserved it, no pressure to reconcile, just validation. His healthy family relationships gave me a glimpse of what functional dynamics looked like. Sunday dinners at his parents' house revealed respectful disagreement, unconditional support, and genuine interest. The contrast with my own family was striking. Therapy also shifted from crisis management to deeper healing. With guidance, I examined childhood patterns, addressed unhealthy coping strategies, and developed stronger boundaries. "You've made remarkable progress," my therapist observed. "You're breaking generational patterns." That comment stayed with me. My greatest victory wasn't professional, it was internal. I had learned to recognize and reject the dysfunction that had shaped my family. This change showed up in everyday life. I became more confident at work, proposing bold campaigns and defending ideas. I set clearer boundaries with friends, stopped agreeing to draining plans, and rediscovered hobbies like photography and creative writing. I also blocked communication from my mother and older siblings. After months of guilt-inducing and hostile texts, I realized each interaction delayed my healing. Kevin was the exception. His messages had shifted toward genuine attempts at connection. 5 months after being forced out, I attended a marketing conference and unexpectedly ran into Mrs. Reynolds, my high school journalism teacher. She had always encouraged my creativity when others focused only on grades. "Leah Harrison, how wonderful to see you," she greeted warmly. Over coffee, she told me she had always believed in my potential. Her support had been rare and genuine, not conditional. "You always had a unique perspective. I'm not surprised you found success on your own terms." That meeting inspired me to help others facing family estrangement. I started a blog, offering practical advice on building independence from budgeting to emotional resilience. Soon, comments and messages poured in from readers who found comfort in my story. "Your post about holiday coping strategies got me through Christmas," one wrote. "For the first time, I didn't feel guilty about protecting my peace." Through the blog, I continued my own healing. Writing transformed painful memories into lessons, while connecting me with a community who understood without explanation. 6 months of independence approached. I realized something important. The family who had discarded me had unknowingly given me a gift, the chance to discover my strength, reshape my identity, and create a life aligned with who I truly was. The journey had been painful, but the destination was worth every step. Exactly 6 months after finding my belongings stuffed into garbage bags, my phone buzzed with notifications. The first messages were from my mother, then 5 more. By the end of the day, I had 60 texts, ranging from accusations to desperate pleas. "Where are you? Why won't you answer? After everything I've done for you, I need to talk to you. This is an emergency. Please call me." The final message, sent late at night, was different. "I made a mistake. I need your help." Despite my therapist's advice, I read them all. Something had clearly happened, serious enough to pierce her pride and denial. Beneath my defenses, concern flickered. The next morning, I called Kevin, the one sibling who had shown at least some regret. "What's going on with Mom?" I asked when he answered. A heavy sigh echoed through the phone. She had lost everything. The story came out in pieces, each harder to believe than the last. Mom had sold the family home, receiving a large payout that should have secured her retirement. Instead of handling it carefully, she handed the entire amount to a financial advisor, introduced by someone at church. It turned out to be a scam. Kevin explained that the man disappeared with her money, along with the savings of at least 10 others. That's awful, I said, genuinely sympathetic despite our strained past. But why are you calling me now? Where are Jackson and Natalie? Another pause. They aren't speaking to her. What? Why? She promised each of us part of the money from the house. Jackson already put down a deposit on a vacation property based on that promise. Natalie planned to renovate her home. And me. I was more cautious, he admitted. But I'm still angry. She made choices without consulting any of us, then lost everything. The irony struck me. My mother had excluded me from decisions about my own living situation, and now she was experiencing the same treatment from her other children. There's more, Kevin said reluctantly. She has nowhere to live. The new owners moved into the house last week. She's been staying at a motel, but her money is almost gone. Where does she expect to go? I asked. She mentioned your new apartment. A wave of disbelief hit me. After throwing me out without notice, her plan was now to move in with me. The audacity was staggering. That's not happening, I said firmly. I know, Kevin agreed, surprising me. It wouldn't be fair after everything. But she does need something, Leah. She's still our mother. The situation forced me to face difficult questions about obligation, forgiveness, and boundaries. What did I owe the woman who had raised me but also hurt me? Could I help without giving up the independence I had worked so hard to build? Was it possible to show compassion without repeating toxic patterns? After discussing it with my therapist, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, a neutral setting where I could leave if necessary. Daniel offered to wait nearby, giving me both support and a backup plan if things became overwhelming. When my mother arrived, she looked diminished. Her once confident posture was replaced by a nervous hunch. The designer outfits and polished makeup that defined her image were gone, replaced with casual clothes and minimal cosmetics. She looked years older. Thank you for coming, she began, holding her coffee cup tightly. I didn't think you would. I almost didn't, I replied honestly. We sat in silence, the weight of our history heavy between us. I lost everything, she finally admitted. The house, the money, everything. Kevin told me. Jackson and Natalie won't speak to me. They say I betrayed them. I nodded, recognizing her pain without taking ownership of it. I need help, Leah. Her voice broke. I have nowhere to go. The request hung in the air. She expected me, the child she had cast aside, rescue her. 6 months earlier, I might have agreed instantly, desperate for her approval. Now, I saw things with painful clarity. Do you understand what you did to me? I asked quietly. She blinked, unprepared. I was trying to help you become independent. By throwing me out without warning, by packing my things in garbage bags while I was gone, by humiliating me in front of the family. I may have handled it poorly, she admitted, but my intentions were good. Your intentions. I let out a humorless laugh. You sold the house without telling me. You planned to reduce my inheritance. You treated me as if I were a burden instead of your daughter. Tears filled her eyes. I made mistakes. Yes, I said evenly. You did. And now you're facing consequences. Just like I had to face the consequences of your actions 6 months ago. So you won't help me? She asked, indignation creeping into her tone. After everything I sacrificed raising you. I didn't say that, I corrected her. I'm willing to help, but on my terms, not yours. I laid out the boundaries I had decided on with my therapist. I would help her look for affordable senior housing and contribute a modest monthly amount toward her expenses, but she would not live with me, borrow money directly, or return to the controlling role she once had. That's your idea of help? She asked, incredulous. That's what I can offer, while still respecting myself, I replied. Take it, or leave it. The conversation went on for nearly 2 hours, filled with accusations, explanations, tears, and hesitant steps toward understanding. She struggled to accept that our relationship had permanently changed, that her authority was gone because of her own choices. I never thought you'd be so hard, she said at one point. I never thought I'd need to be, I responded. But here we are. By the end, we reached a fragile agreement. I would research housing options and help with applications. She would attend family therapy with me as a condition for ongoing support. Neither of us felt fully satisfied, but it was a compromise that protected my boundaries while still acknowledging our bond. As we prepared to leave, she asked, "When will things go back to normal between us?" I looked at her with compassion but firm honesty. "They won't. That version of our relationship is gone. We might build something new, something healthier, but we can't go back." Her face fell as the reality of permanent change settled. In that moment, something shifted in me. The anger I had carried for months loosened its grip. I no longer saw her as the powerful figure from my childhood, but as a flawed person whose poor choices had cost her dearly. That realization didn't erase the harm she caused, but it allowed me to respond from strength instead of pain. I could now offer limited support without sacrificing the stability I had worked to create, a balance I never could have managed. 6 months earlier, as I left the coffee shop, Daniel walked beside me. "How did it go?" he asked. "Exactly as hard as I expected," I replied, "but necessary. Are you okay?" I thought for a moment. "Not yet, but I will be." That evening, for the first time in months, I received messages from both Jackson and Natalie. Word of my meeting with Mom had already reached them. Their messages spread quickly after word of my limited help. None carried apologies for their role in my eviction, only subtle attempts to assess my mother's finances and my level of involvement. I ignored them, recognizing the same unhealthy cycles rather than genuine efforts at reconciliation. Some relationships can heal with time and work. Others are best kept at a distance for one's own well-being. Learning to tell the difference became part of my personal growth. The family crisis that triggered those 60 desperate texts did not lead to a Hollywood-style reconciliation or tidy resolution. Instead, it offered something far more meaningful: confirmation that the boundaries I had created were necessary, and that the independent life I was building was worth protecting. In the weeks following our difficult meeting at the coffee shop, I supported my mother through the complicated process of finding affordable senior housing. My help was practical, not financial, researching options, explaining application requirements, and driving her to appointments when needed. Eventually, she moved into Pine Meadows, a facility offering independent apartments with optional support services. Her small studio was a sharp contrast to our family home, but it gave her safety, community, and a new beginning. "It's small," she said on Mother's Day, glancing at the compact kitchen and living space. "So was my first apartment," I reminded her gently. "You adjust." The comparison was not lost on her. For perhaps the first time, my mother was facing the reality of starting over with limited resources, the very experience she had forced on me without warning. Our relationship stayed complicated, but distance created room for slow healing. She began weekly therapy, hesitant at first, but it soon became a structured space to confront long-standing patterns and improve communication. "I'd never realized how my own upbringing shaped my parenting," she admitted during a breakthrough session. "My mother was even more controlling than I was." Understanding the roots of her behavior did not excuse the harm, but it gave context that helped me process my own childhood. Generational trauma had shaped our family in ways none of us had acknowledged. That's promised. I contributed a modest monthly amount toward her expenses, carefully calculated to provide necessary help without risking my own security. This arrangement was formalized through therapy, setting clear expectations and boundaries for both of us. My connections with my siblings developed differently. Kevin and I slowly rebuilt a cautious bond, meeting for coffee and exchanging texts. He apologized for his role in my eviction, an admission that allowed space for possible reconciliation. "I should have defended you," he told me once. "Knew it was wrong." "Then why didn't you?" I asked, not accusing, just curious. "It was easier to go along," he admitted. "I've always followed Mom and Jackson's lead, even when I disagreed." His honesty reflected patterns I knew well, the same dynamics that had shaped my own choices. Through our talks, we gained clearer insight into the system that had constrained us both. Jackson, however, remained distant. His contact was limited to impersonal holiday greetings or family announcements, with no effort at meaningful connection. His pride left no room for acknowledgement of harm, and I no longer felt the need to seek his approval. The biggest surprise came from Natalie. 6 months after our mother's financial collapse, she faced her own crisis when her husband asked for a divorce. Suddenly raising 2 children alone, she struggled with a lifestyle she could no longer maintain. Vulnerability gave her a new perspective. "I never understood what it felt like to have your life turned upside down overnight," she said during an unexpected call. But now, I think I do. Our reconciliation was fragile and unfinished, but it opened doors I hadn't expected. We began meeting monthly for lunch, slowly rebuilding trust through consistency. Not grand gestures. While family ties shifted, my career advanced. A year after the promotion that coincided with my forced independence, I was offered the role of marketing director, overseeing campaigns, managing client relationships, and receiving a significant salary increase, along with stock options and benefits. For the first time, I felt financially secure, able to plan long-term, instead of just surviving month to month. With that stability came the chance to pursue a dream I had kept to myself, owning a home, working with a realtor. I found a small but welcoming condo in a diverse neighborhood with a manageable commute. When I held the keys for the first time, standing alone in the empty living room, I was overwhelmed by the moment's weight. This space was unearned through my work, chosen by me, secured by my credit and reputation. No one could force me out. No one could diminish this achievement. I hosted a housewarming for the friends who had supported me during my hardest years: Tyler, Daniel, colleagues, therapy group members, and even Kevin. My home filled with laughter and warmth. Talia, Zoe said, raising her glass, who turned garbage bags into a beautiful home. Through determination and courage, my journey became less about painful memories and more about resilience and growth. What had once felt traumatic evolved into a story of strength and perseverance. As my circumstances stabilized, I turned inward, continuing the work of healing and self-discovery. With my therapist's encouragement, I started a small scholarship fund to support young adults transitioning out of foster care or difficult family situations. Grants were modest but meaningful, covering things like security deposits, professional clothing, or educational costs, practical needs often overlooked by larger programs. When I shared the first recipient's feedback, my therapist said, "You've turned your pain into purpose. That is true healing." Those words stayed with me. The betrayal that had once shattered my sense of security ultimately uncovered strengths I may never have realized otherwise. Standing on my own taught me that I could not only survive but also build a life on my own terms. My relationship with my mother would never return to what it once was, and I no longer wished for it to. Our old dynamic had been unhealthy, based on control instead of respect. Slowly, we began creating something new, a relationship between adults, guided by boundaries and realistic expectations. During our final therapy session of the year, my mother said something that showed how far we had come. "I am proud of you. Not because you're successful in the traditional sense, though you are. I'm proud of who you've become, how you've faced adversity, much of which I caused." That acknowledgement, offered without comparison to my siblings, was perhaps the most genuine approval she had ever given me. It mattered, but differently than before. Her validation was welcome, yet no longer essential for my identity or that shift became the deepest lesson of my journey. Love should not depend on compliance, and belonging should never be conditional on achievement. Some wounds never fully heal, some relationships cannot be restored, and some betrayals permanently change how we view trust and loyalty. But within those painful truths are opportunities for growth we might otherwise never discover. Sometimes being forced out of what feels like home leads us to where we truly belong, to the person we were meant to become. What began with garbage bags at a gate ended with the keys to my own front door, both literally and metaphorically. That path transformed not only my circumstances but also my understanding of family, independence, and self-worth. In losing what I thought I needed, I found what I truly deserved, a life defined by my choices, not by others' expectations. Have you ever faced a moment when family betrayal led you to unexpected strength? How did you rebuild after a broken relationship? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most meaningful beginnings. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to set boundaries that protect your peace, and the strength to build a life that reflects your true worth.